So hello everyone and welcome to the first part of catching up on JP, where we'll go over some summaries of events that happened between the English and the Japanese server to get you up to speed with all of the story that you need to know. Today we're going to start with Rarity Star, which is a very fun event, and then we're going to get into a Green Jasper Diviners, which is a rather serious event that is also has heavy ties back to Arc 2 and was one of the events that basically is directly required to understand Arc 2. So let's keep going and start with the first event. Kamihama Rarity Star. We start out with Iroha-chan once again following her ambition to try and become a natural 4-star to raise her own rarity, so she's trying to go around the city and find someone who can help her. Her first stop is Mitama, who doesn't offer that kind of service because she's never tried it, so she goes and tries raising someone's rarity for the first time, which basically looks like a satanistic ritual that ends up just putting a decorative star on Iroha. So the next stop they go to Hinano and Emiri together with Felicia in tow, and Felicia tries to bribe them with some jelly. Maybe that bribes them, doesn't. So in the end Felicia just grabs a potion and drinks a little bit of it herself, but it doesn't do anything because, as Hinano says, the potion only really works if you're already at a natural 4-star rarity, and then it would make you doppel. And that's basically what the potion does, so it doesn't really help. They then go and visit Asuka, who gives them a lecture, and she talks a bit more, and she keeps talking until everyone just walks away. Then they all go over and they visit Nanaka, and Nanaka tells Iroha that in order to raise her own rarity, no one else can do that for her. The only way to do that is to grow as a better person, grow from within. So they say, okay, and they just leave and go over to, well, just Yachiyo, because Yachiyo is there as well, and she says that they could find more information if maybe they go to a place where a lot of people gather, like a restaurant maybe, that is known to many magical girls. So you actually get to choose between Banbansai and Walnuts, but if you choose Banbansai, the game just tells you, no, you can't choose that, and the game only lets you choose Walnuts. Nice. So, of course, you go to Walnuts, and Manaka is right there, and she tells you that she's heard of this place. There's this rumor going around of this new place that is opening up where maybe there's some way in that place to raise your rarity. So they go over to that place, and they come to a church with a really badly disguised Alina and Naze, and they immediately capture Iroha, and they just put her in a giant vat of some weird liquid. And of course, in the meantime, Madoka Senpai and Felicia-chan are there, and they heroically beat up the Naze by bullying them, smacking them, biting them, or whatever. Why do you keep bullying the Naze even in Magi Report? So meanwhile, in the vat, Iroha-senpai realizes that this entire big vat is like an Uwasa, and this Uwasa can raise rarity, so now she believes that she's a natural 4-star. So what she does is, she still has that potion with her from Hinano, so now that she's natural 4-star, she drinks the potion to unlock all of her power, and what happens is, the entire vat explodes, and Iroha is suddenly standing there as a 10-meter tall giant. So Aina and the Naze, they flee in horror seeing this, and suddenly Homura arrives at the scene, and Homura says that it was her who was behind all of this, behind this entire rumor, this Savasa. It was all her plan, because Homura wanted Madoka Senpai to raise her rarity to become a natural 4-star. But then she realized that that's actually a really bad idea, because if Madoka Senpai was stronger and actually useful, then she would be taken into mirrors more often, and in mirrors she would get her teeth kicked in all the time, so that's not a good idea. So then everyone makes up again, everyone's happy, everyone's riding off into the sunset apart from Iroha-chan, who is just crying as a 10-meter tall giant. Green Jasper Diviners. We start out with a new character being introduced called Chiharu, and she is on her way with her mother to the small village that her mother was from, and it turns out this village was completely shut off from the outside world and still is, and somehow everyone in the village knows about magical girls, and they know about wishes and everything that it does, and also in that village, wishes are specifically used to further help the village as a whole. So arriving over there, Chiharu quickly becomes good friends with two other characters there, Sunao and Shizuka, who are magical girls, while Chiharu isn't, and Shizuka gives Chiharu the nickname Charu. So Charu would like to become a magical girl too, seeing all of this cool fighting that these two guys are doing. And so the village elder specifically tells Chiharu the wish that she has to wish for, and it's about some crime, and you have to bring some hidden incriminating evidence to light. That basically what her wish is supposed to be. It doesn't really matter the details. So then you get to this really big ceremony where Kyubei is being revered as like a messenger of God or something, and there Charu makes her wish and becomes a magical girl. Then next up, Charu, of course, as a fresh magic girl, goes out and goes witch hunting together with Sunao and Shizuka, where Shizuka teaches Charu more about the magical girl system and gives her a big rundown of how everything works. Also worth noting is that they have completely different names for everything in the magical system. For example, for them it's not magical girls, they're called diviners, and witches are called devils and stuff like that. So Charu then has an interesting question. She asks Shizuka what happens when their soul gems become fully corrupted. Shizuka herself doesn't actually know this, so she goes up to the village elder and she asks what happens, and the village elder says that at that point a magical girl has become mature, and mature magical girls have to leave the village. Charu also hears about this, but she has this new detective-like intuition and can smell evil because of her wish. So that's basically her innate magic, that she can just smell evil and have this really good intuition. And she has this intuition that something is really wrong with that sort of answer, and so she wants to investigate. So she tries to investigate more by going back to the shrine where that big ceremony was being held, because she has an idea that maybe there is something at that shrine that might help us get a better understanding of what is going on in this village, because she has a really bad feeling about everything. However, Shizuka is there as well, and she kind of doesn't want her to go in because it's not allowed to go to the shrine outside of the ceremony. And you actually get a choice here to either just go to the shrine anyway or to like actually back off. And there are many choices like this throughout this entire event, because this was a branch event. And if you do this, and usually choices like this are that you either have to you either get a choice to go and really try and find out the truth of something, or you can back off. If you try to search for the truth, you will pretty much always get a bad ending by Chihiro suddenly fainting, and then just says bad end. So you have to back off, and you get Charu and Shizuka. They talk a little bit more about what is going on, but nothing really happens until suddenly they are surrounded by familiars that attack them, and it also suddenly starts to rain really heavily. So during that fight, Shizuka's soul gem grows darker and darker and is almost completely corrupted, and it also turns out that because of that she is slowing down and her movements are getting worse, and she ends up getting gravely wounded by a familiar towards the end of the fight. So after that, Shizuka then gets patched up and taken to safety by the villagers. And the next day, Charu visits Shizuka, and it turns out that Shizuka's soul gem really is about to go completely dark. So Shizuka says that she has to leave the village, which is really sad for Charu because they were really good friends at that point. But then the next day, when Shizuka is about to leave the village, it turns out that Charu's detective instinct and her smelling evil is suddenly coming in, and she notices that something is terribly wrong with everything that is happening. So she rushes after Shizuka and finds Shizuka in the distance as she talks to the village elder. And then they're like standing on a bridge above some river. And then suddenly the village elder just kicks Shizuka into the river below. And because Shizuka is basically like just a few seconds from witching out, she basically can't do anything and is about to drown. So Charu jumps in and jumps after Shizuka to try to save her. And what happens then is, very first time they were hunting a witch, Charu got a grief seed from Shizuka, and she held onto that, and you use that here to save Shizuka and make sure that she doesn't die, and then you make it back up to shore, but not before noticing that basically the entire bed of the river is full of like dozens of dead magical girl bones. So then they make it back to shore, where this is something that is actually kind of not planned, but they have sort of a secondary plan in case magical girls don't die in the river. And that a secondary plan is there is a village assassin that is supposed to be there and kill anyone who doesn't become a witch. And that village assassin turns out to be Sunao. So Sunao is standing there at the riverbed, and she is also trying to kill them. But just as Sunao does try to do the finishing blow to kill both of them, she actually stops herself because she is also really good friends with them and she just can't do it. So she ends up sparing them, even though she's probably killed a whole bunch of other magic girls in the past. She's kind of she's not evil, but she is a killer. Okay, so she does spare them, and they talk a little bit about what is going on, and they do realize a few things. They do make some connections. They do bring all the clues and info back together that they have. And what they realize with all the info that they have is that indeed there is this idea that the fact that mature magic girls have to leave the village, that is kind of a lie, because as you saw, they just push magic girls into the river and they just hope that they turn into a witch there, because the river would then drag the grief seed away, and the witch would then hatch in the lair of some other witch that is really far away, the witch called Yura-Yura-sama, and that big witch feeds on other witches, and that's sort of their way of disposing of witches, is to just feed them to some other witch, to like completely get rid of the magical girls, because the idea is that they sell magical girl wishes to really powerful, really rich people in order for money or other favors that they would gain in return. And then of course when a magical girl is about to expire, they just sort of dispose of them. They also realized though that it is only the actual village elder and the family of the village elder that is responsible for all of this, and the rest of the village is completely innocent. There's nothing bad with them going on. And also the reason why Sunao was actually the village assassin is because Sunao's parents are being threatened by the village elder, and so Sunao is sort of getting blackmailed into doing it. So at that point, then it turns out that they are trying to fight this powerful witch that is in the vicinity, because they also realize that the entire village is part of a big witch barrier, big witch labyrinth. And they go into that labyrinth and they find the village elder next to the witch, who is acting like she's being controlled, but they notice rather quickly that, especially after they defeat the witch, that the village elder can actually control witches herself, because in the past she just had some magical girl specifically wish that the village elder can control magical girls. So they confront the village elder. They're about to kick her teeth in, but she kills herself on the spot. So the village elder is now dead and they don't get any more information out of her. That kind of sucks, but that's not quite the end there, because Chiharu smells that there is something still wrong with the village elder. So they go over there, they search her body, and they find these two special books. And in those two special books, they find a bunch of information about a whole bunch of stuff. So, for example, they find that the family of the village elder, even in the past, they were the ones that set up this entire system of selling wishes to rich people in order to help the village out. And it also details that this Yura-Yura-sama is like a vagabond witch that sort of, I think, originated in the village. I think was one of their ancestors that has afterwards then been repurposed this way. But because the witch is actually trying to get back into the village, because that's the witch's home, now that the barrier, that the labyrinth around the village is gone, now Yura-Yura-sama would really love to go back into the village. So they have to go and fight back Yura-Yura-sama to make sure it doesn't attack the village. So what they do now is they get ready, and apparently Shizuka, her magical girl weapon, is this ultimate cool sword of justice and awesomeness. And I think if you look at the Arc 2 logo, you can actually see it's a Shichiso. I can't say that name. Chichisto, whatever. It's like a 7-pronged sword, and that sword apparently specifically can destroy this witch. So they go out as a trio now, Shizuka, Charu, and Sunao, now back as the three friends of awesomeness and justice, go and fight the witch, but they actually kind of almost fail, because Shizuka, having seen this deep corruption that has infested the village, she kind of wavers and sort of questions herself, which makes her slow down. But it's okay, because Charu has the power of awesomeness and friendship, and tells her that she has also figured out that because it was only at some point when the village elder's family got hold of this secret, that the village was corrupted. And before that, there was actually this grand old time where magical girls were specifically making wishes to save their friends, to save their family, and that they were all good people, and that she should believe in her ancestors who were doing such great things. So with the power of friendship and anime, they all combine and defeat the bad guy Yura-Yura-sama, and everything is fine again. So now that the village knows that there was this deep corruption, that sort of ends, and someone else becomes the village elder, and they're good now, no problem. So what happens at that point is they want to talk to Kyubey, because Kyubey must know some of the bad stuff that has gone on here. Maybe Kyubey also has some other information about other villages, other magic girls in the area that they might need to help out. And what it turns out is Kyubey tells them something really weird. Kyubey tells them, hey, there's this city that recently had to deal with something that purified soul gems. So they might be in need of some help, or maybe you want to check them out because they have this purification system now. There was this big fight, but it's over now. Don't worry about it. Just check it out and see if you can do something. So then they all go and they go over there to Kamehama City, as it turns out, where they will arrive when Arc 2 begins. One last thing to notice, as I mentioned earlier, is that because the three of them, they come from the village and they use different names, they might have to get used to the city life and the modern magical girl stuff, but it's okay because they have the power of the detective Charu, they have the power of friendship in Shizuka, and they have the power of violent assassination with Sunao. And together the three of them form the Tokime clan. And yeah, that's how one of the big factions of Arc 2 have come together. They of course will gather other allies that we will see in main story as well. They even have their own faceless goons, just like the Black Feathers and White Feathers, who also join them and help them out in just fighting against general evil. So yeah, that was that. Hope you guys enjoyed this. See you guys next time.